All right, so today we're going to dive into crypto mining in general and the update of what this may play out, both in the aspect of the crypto markets, but also maybe into the future of where Bitcoin and mini projects are going. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back to TechPath. Let's dive into it today with Miss Sue Ennis, who is coming over to us from Hut 8. You've been on the show before, Sue. Great to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back. Love your channel, love your audience, and lots to talk about today.
Yes. Sue, let's get a quick update on Hut 8. Any kind of new information or anything special that you guys are in the midst of? There's been a lot in the news here recently, but I'm just kind of curious, what's the current
Yeah,
update there at Hut 8?
so the current update is Hut remains the highest holder of self-mined Bitcoin of any publicly traded Bitcoin miner in globally. We have over 5,500 Bitcoin that we're still holding on our balance sheet. But the most exciting thing that's recently happened with Hut 8 is we announced last week that we actually bought the data center business of a publicly traded company called TerraGo. So that's 5 data centers across Canada that are powered by renewables. And effectively, what we're doing is we're not only diversifying our business. So this data center actually comes with 400 commercial customers in the traditional data cloud and co-location space. So customers in the gaming, media and entertainment, and government side of industry. But traditionally, data centers often have about 40% of white space, so unused capacity. And what we're going to be doing is filling that white space with GPU miners and open source blockchain technology. So effectively, we're now becoming the bridge between Web 2.0 and also Web 3.0, traditional and nascent iterations of high performance compute, but also providing our investors with an extraordinarily now diversified business. And we're really excited about it. We're really, really excited.
So tying all of these data centers together, I think that obviously that's going to be a big key factor with the growth of any mining operation. I like the fact that you guys are leveraging out into the data side of things as well as the mining aspect. So that in itself is some huge opportunity for growth. When you look at this on a global scale, would Hut 8 be able to operate, data centers around the world, South America, Asia, Europe? How would that look?
Yeah. So listen, everything is within the realm of possibility. And that's partially because Jamie Leverton, our CEO, she has spent the past 20 years in the traditional data infrastructure, high transformation growth mandate space. So she brings a different lens. She brings an operational, traditional high performance compute lens to everything she does with the Hut 8 mining business. So she actually had known about these assets for years prior to even joining Hut 8 and knew some of the extraordinary sort of underappreciated market opportunity that existed within these assets. So yeah, I think that's one of the major competitive differentiators with Hut 8 is that you have data center operators at the helm here making decisions, and we're able to see and connect silos of opportunity that perhaps a lot of other CEOs in this space wouldn't be able to target or identify just because they don't have that background that Jamie brings.
All right, so potential for growth for sure. Let's get
Yes.
into, yeah, I like that. All right, Sue, let's look at a couple of things. We are nearing, kind of a no man's land for Bitcoin price, especially right now. We have some analysts that are saying we still could see another drop, which could push us into the 30K range. When we get into that range, the first question that starts to pop up, especially on the major holders, you guys being the number one Bitcoin holder essentially among the miners, is when is and if it is a conditional situation from the markets that would put a miner in a position to sell their Bitcoin. Do you
Yeah.
see any of the miners moving into that direction once you get under, say, a 30K? Is there a no man's land for Bitcoin's price to affect a sale?
I see certainly perhaps some of the younger entrants into the space who perhaps aren't as well capitalized as Hut 8 is, or are perhaps waiting still on inventory and equipment to be delivered, could potentially be in that position.
Yeah.
For Hut 8, though, we probably wouldn't be in that sort of trigger space until well under $20,000 market price. We're still incredibly profitable. We actually have a portion of our equipment that is fully paid off,
Mm,
and is just pure profits. So
yeah.
we have a little bit more bandwidth just because we have a laddered fleet and because we've been in the industry since late 2017. So quite frankly, we've been here before. But I think for sure some of the newer entrants into the game who are going through their first bear market, they may not have the sort of balance sheet management approach or strategy that we've had to employ because we've been around for so long and suffered through bear markets, but also thrived and survived and captured the bull markets. So, but I think unless we hit below the $20,000 price point, then I think everyone generally should be able to keep the lights on.
Yeah, and I think when you look at just the layers of potential large wallet positions, especially around Bitcoin, I was looking at yours in the 5,500 range for big. Obviously, that would be a major, scenario where we start to watch those kind of movements out there in the space. So it's good to know you guys are
Actually,
looking to a long. Yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was going to say, and what's actually really interesting is, it's obviously been a bit of a bloodbath out there,
Right.
but we're now seeing tremendous amounts of Bitcoin moving off of exchanges and
Hmm.
back into hardware wallets or wherever it may be in the past about 72 hours, which actually is a relatively bullish
Yes.
indicator that people are not, or whales are not gearing up for a selling event on exchanges. So things
Yeah,
are
that's a
turning up.
good point. Yeah, that's a good point. You just mentioned that we were going to bring that up in the sense of where we were seeing hardware wallet movement. And with that being the space, and of course we are seeing a little bit of this, with the inception of where we're watching the Fed rates here in the US at least, which have, somewhat of a global effect. Obviously we saw, you know, Powell be somewhat dovish, but at the same time hawkish. I know that's weird to say, but the reality is that we will see those kind of movements which could affect us over the long term. But in the essence of what we'll see, moving into the next halving, I think is going to be a very critical point of where rates will be at that time. When you
Mhm.
look at the halving, the next major move, obviously, you guys have to put out a forecast on what kind of equipment needs you're going to have, the scenario against ESG, the whole aspect of how you're going to scale to be able to handle the additional block requirements for compute. Um, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think you guys will approach that without giving away any of the proprietary, but getting
Right.
ready for the next major opportunity here for really mining Bitcoin?
Yeah. So, well, HUD 8, first of all, we did a raise back in September for about 173 million US.
Mhm.
Um, and again, because we've been around, we're one of the oldest miners in this space. We have seen it all. And so we really do take a balance sheet first approach to how we manage the business and how we plan for the future. So all of that to say is that we do think that this year, as hash rate continues to increase, but Bitcoin perhaps doesn't also go on a similar price tear,
Right.
we do think that there is going to be a lot of consolidation, and we, openly stated in our prospectus that we are certainly looking at M&A opportunity and effectively to go shopping because we do think that some people are going to be look to be acquired. And like I said, though, also diversification really is a major priority for us. Again, with this latest data center move and our plans for the traditional 40% white space that transpires in the data center industry, filling that with GPU miners, we think also really positions us favorably to capture greater growth. And yeah, I'd say that's sort of the most I can divulge right now. But like I said, we're very cashed up. We think there's going to be a lot of consolidation this year, and we're ready to go and take advantage
Yeah.
of opportunities.
All right. So besides consolidation, the potential for advancements in tech, whether it's
Yes.
from the compute side, which we'll see potentially, faster chips over the next 18 months. We're seeing a lot of people looking toward potential major shifts from the chip makers to adopt to this next phase of tech, which could really affect mining in general. But
Yeah.
along with that, now you've got the ESG side of things, whether it is sustainable energy, the aspect of being off grid, all those kind of components that will start to play into this. Are there key aspects of tech and then also from the sustainable aspect, big, how are you guys addressing those two issues moving forward? Because you're moving into a very critical time.
Yeah, for sure. So you bring up a great point. So Intel is launching a chip which we're incredibly excited about because this is obviously a traditional chip manufacturer who's now getting into the ASIC, so AKA the Bitcoin mining
Right.
space. We have a great relationship there. And again, this comes from having a CEO who's been playing in the traditional technology and hardware space for so long. So we're really excited to see. I believe Intel is unveiling their chip technology in early February. So we certainly will be part of that. Taking a look at that technology. We do have a wonderful relationship with them already. So we also think it will be really interesting to see what other hardware providers from the traditional space also start to play. I mean, again, we wouldn't be surprised if we saw Dell come down the pipeline with an ASIC chip. And so I think as an operator, for us, having the ability to diversify our relationships and who we get equipment from, not tying ourselves into one manufacturer partnership, is something that we've been focused on this year, especially. So we are the only authorized MicroBT repair center in Canada, and that's a wonderful relationship. We do love that relationship with MicroBT. They have tremendous service and a great relationship with them. And it also helps us get a little bit closer to the supply chain, given that we are still seeing supply chain constraints in manufacturing of equipment. However, yeah, we're really excited to see the efficiencies that some of these newer providers are going to come down the pipeline with. And then from an ESG perspective, absolutely. We think that every single operator out there is going to need to have a strategy and going to need to have a plan, because right now there is still a ton of misconception in the media just about how pollutive mining operators are. So just some fun stats. There's a little over 154,000 terawatt hours is what is globally consumed. Is the approximate amount of energy generated worldwide. Okay, and Bitcoin mining globally consumes less than 1%. It consumes 0.14% of that total energy. And of the 50,000 terawatt hours of total global energy output that is lost due to inefficiencies, Bitcoin mining consumes about 0.44% of that. So there's and actually 66% of Bitcoin mining operators, 66% of energy used in Bitcoin mining actually is from sustainable sources. So there is quite a bit of misconception, but it is still on mining operators. We are operating nascent technology of the future. So it is on us, absolutely, for sure, to have a plan, to consider the environment as a stakeholder and a shareholder of our business. So, Hut 8, for example, we're pledging to go carbon neutral by 2025. These data centers we just bought are all powered by renewable sources. So hydro, a little bit of solar and wind, and then 30% of our existing operations is powered by solar and wind energy. But we certainly think that, yeah, everyone's going to have an ESG strategy, and also just really building relationships with regulators so that in the spirit of thoughtful innovation can transpire with regulators, and that you can actually there can actually be a constructive conversation. Because, for example, with the most recent energy debate, what was really startling for all of us in the industry to see was there was no one from the global Bitcoin mining community present at this debate. The sources that were being referenced in this energy discussion were from Yahoo and sort of non-peer reviewed academic articles were being referenced as fact. And so it's on us as a community to I think, we think, really build out those relationships with regulators and make sure that we're having a constructive conversation. So
yeah, I was just looking at a couple of points here in reference to what you're mentioning. This was a story by The Block that was jumped out on a few days ago. No fireworks at the House's Bitcoin mining hearing, but pending climate bills could kind of really zone in on crypto. That's one of the things that a lot of people have been pointing to. And then if you look at this piece right here by Frank Pallone, not wanting to bring entire fossil fuel plants back online, chairman of the Fuel Energy, the return of peaker plants now used for Bitcoin mining, particularly in light of cleaner blockchain techs that already exist. So that is the issue I think you're mentioning, which is that Bitcoin mining is still in a stage in which it has to create a public persona, in essence, that is quite a different one than what has been, even though the people that are close to it, like us and you and many of the investors that watch our show and people that are in the blockchain space, we understand what the real aspect is. But the regulators are the one that seem to be starting to lose their way, which is a concern to me, especially when you look at this story right here, where now we've got Biden looking at this as a matter of national security. Now, this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with mining, but it has everything to do with Bitcoin and maybe the future of digital assets. So there's a lot happening in the space right now. Do you feel like this is leading up to potentially a stump talking point for the potential candidates running for the presidency here in the United States, which has such a global effect, overall, especially around ESG, the Bitcoin digital assets component?
Yeah,
It seems like there's a little bit of a perfect storm brewing right now. What are your thoughts on
for
that?
sure. For sure. I do think that it is going to be a part of the narrative in the upcoming election for sure. I think also Senator Warren has certainly um, caused quite a bit of attention on the matter again, but I think it's on us, the community, to really focus on education and thoughtful lobbying of these regulators and these senators, because there's still so much misinformation that's being perpetuated out there. So I do think it's on us to really sort of hammer some of the actual facts and reality
Yeah.
home. And I will say one of the good thing though, one of the good thing, as much as there is, a tremendous amount of FUD and naysayers out there in the House, it, we haven't seen anyone push to actually shut it down. That like it is still a conversation, which we think is actually a step forward for our industry. It isn't no longer just this is the dark web, we're all laundering money. Like that narrative has died. And yes, it's now moved on to ESG, but in the grand scheme of the history of this asset, it actually is progress. And we do think it's starting to move in the right direction. It's just going to take a lot more education, but that's not a bad thing. That's never a bad thing.
Yeah, I think the point is that we've seen, even here on our show, we've had several legislators on. There seems to be a dividing of, much like what you see in partisan politics all the time, but the point I'm getting at is that there seems to be a dividing nature of certain regulators that understand what we're talking about and understand where the industry is moving. One of the key things, especially around this from a global standpoint, at least here from the US aspect, is that the United States is trying to, in essence, position against the rest of the planet, in the essence of much like what, when the internet era was truly born, the United States embraced it, very light touch on legislation, and in essence created an economy system within the internet world at that time of, all the unicorns that essentially exist today reside in Silicon Valley. So the likelihood is that if maybe has the U.S. come to the party a little too late, and are there some legislators out there that are starting to really kind of understand that and really kind of push it to the next level? That's my question is, how do we get to those to kind of convince, what's really happening in blockchain is so much bigger than what many people, consider as its detrimental points out
Oh,
there
for
for
sure.
sure.
The innovation opportunity, the job opportunity that this entire ecosystem can bring. I think what will be really interesting is to see once Gensler determines, for example, how Ethereum is going to be classified, if it is a security or not.
Right.
That will make a massive impact in the U.S. in terms of the
Hmm.
survivability of a lot of projects here, and sort of appetite for people to set up shop here who are innovating in this space. Because obviously, if we do consider Ethereum a security, then that does sort of trickle down to a lot of these
Sure.
structures that some of these altcoins have been built on. But again, the industry, the Bitcoin Mining Council, is a group of sort of the top 15 to 20 miners in the industry, and we've had the support of Michael Saylor, and we have had access to some of these politicians who are getting a little noisy in the space. Ted Cruz out of Texas has been tremendous in terms of
Hmm.
getting awareness on the right side of sort of what this industry is about. So I think to your point, we are getting there, and it's sort of just partnering more thoughtfully with the guys who are pro to help teach the guys who don't understand it. It's an exercise. So.
Yeah, I like the essence of some of these politicians who start to kind of understand it. I feel like there's some recognition. I mean, we've had Emmers on, Tom Emmers, before. He just passed or just introduced legislation to prevent unilateral Fed control of digital currency. So this was something that just popped out. He is at least falling in on the side that, and we've had Tom on a couple of times, and he's very well versed on this space in terms of blockchain. I'm just wondering how many, and this is, I guess, my question, and I talk to legislators in DC quite a bit in various industries. One thing that I've noticed is either you have a very educated legislator who completely understands it, who's trying to
Ted Cruz.
convince, yeah, like a Cruz who's trying to, take Bitcoin to become a, legal tender in the state of Texas. But also you have these legislators who absolutely know nothing about it, and that's usually where the impasse comes in. It's much like the technology laws that have been in place around everything from antitrust to what we've seen in terms of just the growth of the internet and some of the regulations that were placed on the internet for copyright law and infringement.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that really came from just certain hot spots of it. Is there anything that is going on in DC or within the Mining Council that is trying to pull those two together in terms of education?
That's a really good question. Within the Mining Council, I mean, again, it's been tough. Like I said, we weren't even really invited to that energy debate, but
right.
Again, we are continuing to build partnerships with what we think are the right people. I'm not really sure I can talk about it just yet, but I'm not sure I have a good answer for that question, just because it's been tough. But we are looking at building, again, just working as hard as we can to get in front of the right people.
Yeah, I think that is the key. To me, there's a missing point here in the industry right now. Even though we've seen some movement from Dapper Labs in terms of creating a lobbyist foothold in DC, which will help with digital assets, but I think Bitcoin and in general, some of the key assets within the crypto space need that, that energy mouthpiece, so to speak, that can get, whether it's a lobbyist or maybe it's just an action group that can really start to help feed the regulators, because there's probably quite a few regulators that are on the fence that could easily be, just a little bit of education, and they could fall either way. So that's what concerns me.
For sure. So Hut 8 Mining independently, we are part of the Global Blockchain Business Council, and that is a group of traditional regulators, also with technologists and groups like us from the Bitcoin mining space. So we are certainly very active in those events as well, and those are very heavily education focused. We joined the Business Renewables Center here in Canada, and that's a group that's really focused on technology and renewables operation and lobbying in Canada. So we do think, at least us as a company, on top of joining and supporting groups like the Bitcoin Mining Council, building a better relationship with guys like Michael Saylor, who are very close with the Gary Genslers of the world. We do think, even just individually as a company, making sure that we're in the arenas where education and where sort of the two opposing sides are going to be mingling together is a place where we should be. We are pretty active about that as well. I think we're going to be at the World Economic Forum as well. So, we're pretty focused on being wherever sort of both ledger is.
Yeah, I think getting into WEF will be a big one for the industry overall, because there's a lot of, if you look at the young leader crowd with the Economic Forum, there's a lot happening there, and I think that definitely a potential future when you look at where currency in general, digital currency, is going to eventually evolve to over the next couple of decades. So right now, the time is now. I've seen this movie before, and we're at that same precipice so to speak,
Yeah.
literally again, in the birth of the internet and what happened there now, I think, with Web3 and cryptocurrencies in general. So definitely going to be something interesting to watch. Sue, it's been great having you back on the show. I love to kind of get an update of what's happening in the mining world. So always great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. Love your show and happy to be back anytime.
Excellent. All right, so you guys are listening in over on the podcast right now. Thanks for dropping in over there. Listen, we are now in the top 10 podcast over on Spotify. Make sure and check out our new podcast, which is a splinter of our TechPath Crypto podcast, and that is called Metaverse Insider. Just search Metaverse Insider on Apple, Spotify, any place you get your podcasts out there, you'll find us. And of course, make sure and subscribe to that. We got some cool things coming up on that one. If you want to catch the full experience, though, it's right here on YouTube. Just search Paul Barron Network. You'll find us. If you want to hit me up, it's out on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.